12,000 years ago, before agriculture, before pottery, before cities, humans carved stone monuments unlike anything the world had ever seen. On a limestone ridge in southeastern Turkey, Göbekli Tepe rewrote the origin story of civilization. For decades, its towering pillars stood exposed to the sky. But beneath them, hidden underground, something else remained unseen. Newly identified chambers, sealed for millennia, are now revealing patterns that challenge our understanding of ancient knowledge. Patterns aligned not only with the heavens, but with cycles that extend into the modern era. Some researchers believe these structures were more than ceremonial. They may have carried a warning, encoded in stone, aimed at a future humanity. Göbekli Tepe dates to roughly 9,600 BCE, making it the oldest known monumental complex on Earth. Built by hunter-gatherers at the end of the last ice age, the site consists of massive T-shaped limestone pillars arranged in circular enclosures. Many are decorated with reliefs of animals: foxes, snakes, vultures, boars, carved with extraordinary precision. Derya Yilmaz had been pushing a ground-penetrating radar unit across the limestone plateau for nearly 3 weeks. The work was methodical and frankly dull. Her assignment was simple: confirm what archaeologists already believed they knew. Göbekli Tepe's famous circular enclosures, A, B, C, and D, had been excavated for decades. The site was assumed to be fully exposed. Then the screen changed. Beneath the familiar T-shaped pillars, Yilmaz saw clean rectangular voids, sharp angles, consistent depths, features that limestone geology does not produce on its own. She stopped the scan, recalibrated the equipment, and ran the transect again. The shapes remained. "These aren't natural," she said quietly, according to field notes later circulated among the team. "Someone carved these." Yilmaz called site director Dr. Lee Clare. When Clare arrived, he stared at the monitor in silence for nearly a minute before speaking. That shouldn't be there. For more than 30 years, archaeologists had believed Göbekli Tepe was a completed story. Monumental stone circles built by Ice Age hunter-gatherers, then deliberately buried. If Yilmaz's radar was correct, that story was incomplete. Or worse, simplified. The implications were immediate and uncomfortable. If there were sealed chambers beneath the enclosures, then decades of published interpretations were missing an entire layer of the site. Göbekli Tepe dates to approximately 9,600 BCE, firmly within the pre-pottery Neolithic A period. Radiocarbon sample HD-20036, recovered from organic material beneath enclosure D, returned a calibrated date range of 9,560 to 9,370 BCE with 95.4% confidence. This places construction thousands of years before ceramics, metallurgy, or domesticated crops. When Klaus Schmidt began excavations in the 1990s, he famously described Göbekli Tepe as the world's first temple. The phrase stuck. It appeared in textbooks, museum labels, documentaries, and UNESCO descriptions after the site was granted World Heritage status in 2018. The story was clean and compelling. Early humans gathered to worship, built monuments, then returned to simpler lives. The enclosures above ground became icons of a revolutionary idea: that religion preceded agriculture. What the story downplayed was uncertainty. Only a fraction of the site had been excavated, and nearly everything archaeologists believed was based on what they could see. Yilmaz's radar suggested something had been hiding in plain sight. Clare had proposed subsurface investigation years earlier. In 2015, he submitted a grant application to conduct limited ground-penetrating radar beneath the visible enclosures. The response from the German Archaeological Institute was polite and final. "The surface structures are still being analyzed," one reviewer wrote. "Subsurface excavation is premature and poses unnecessary risk to known features." Other rejections followed. budget concerns, conservation risks, lack of preliminary evidence. Privately, Claire suspected a deeper issue. Göbekli Tepe had become a brand. The first temple narrative was easy to communicate and economically valuable. Tourism numbers surged after UNESCO designation. A more complex site, one involving hidden chambers and multi-phase use, would complicate that narrative. Complexity doesn't sell brochures, Claire later admitted. For 3 years, proposals stalled in committees. Then, in 2019, a private foundation agreed to fund a non-invasive radar survey. No digging, no disruption. When Yilmaz's scans revealed unmistakable subsurface voids, resistance evaporated. Within 6 months, the same institutions that had labeled the work premature now called it essential. Direct excavation was deemed too risky. Instead, engineers drilled a narrow access point and inserted robotic cameras. Every chamber showed intentional orientation. Every chamber had been deliberately sealed with rubble after use. None showed signs of domestic activity. These weren't storage rooms, Claire concluded. They weren't living spaces. And they weren't meant to be revisited casually. The realization came slowly. Claire stood in the analysis tent, staring at Magli's astronomical charts spread across the table. Each chamber, each alignment, each carved symbol. Klaus Schmidt called this place a temple, Claire said quietly. For 25 years, that's what we've been excavating. A ritual center, a place of worship. He tapped the chart showing precessional cycles. But temples are for the present. You worship now, you make offerings now, you gather now. This, he gestured at the sealed chamber diagrams, this is about deep time, about knowledge that matters in 500 years, in 5,000 years, in 26,000 years. Magli looked up. You're saying it's not a temple? I'm saying, Claire replied, that we've been calling it the wrong thing for 3 decades. This isn't where they worshipped gods. This is where they preserved knowledge for descendants who might need it. An archive. The word hung in the air. An archive built 11,600 years ago. By hunter-gatherers who supposedly couldn't read or write. Who carved their knowledge in stone because stone outlasts everything. And who sealed it underground because they knew memory is fragile. But bedrock is not. The builders of Göbekli Tepe lived at the edge of catastrophe. The Younger Dryas was a period of abrupt climate instability. Ice core data confirms rapid cooling, shifting rainfall, and ecological stress. The chambers do not predict specific future events. They do something more subtle. They encode cycles. The message is not prophecy. It is recurrence. This happened before, Magli suggested. And it will happen again, not on a date, but as part of the world's rhythms. Removing mysticism makes Göbekli Tepe more unsettling, not less. These were people without writing, without metal tools, without permanent settlements, yet they tracked deep time. They planned for futures they would never see. The underground chambers show that early humans were not simply ritualistic. They were analytical, observational, intent on preserving knowledge beyond their own lifespans. Today, most of Göbekli Tepe remains unexcavated. Dozens of anomalies still appear on radar scans, waiting beneath the soil. Claire often walks the site in the early morning, before tourists arrive. We thought we understood this place, he said recently. We were wrong. Göbekli Tepe's biggest secret is not a warning carved for a specific year. It is the realization that humanity has been thinking long-term, catastrophically long-term, for far longer than we ever assumed. In 2024, climate scientists released updated models showing Earth's orbital cycles contribute to long-term climate patterns. The Milankovitch cycles, variations in Earth's orbit and axial tilt, operate on timescales of 26,000, 41,000, and 100,000 years. These are the same cycles encoded in Göbekli Tepe's chambers. They weren't tracking the cycles to predict Tuesday's weather, Magli explained. They were tracking patterns that affect climate, animal migrations, plant availability over millennia. Modern civilization has existed for roughly 6,000 years, since the first cities in Mesopotamia. We think in terms of decades, maybe centuries. The builders of Göbekli Tepe were thinking in terms of tens of thousands of years. We've lost that capacity, Claire said. We build for quarterly profits, election cycles, maybe a generation ahead. They built for timescales we can't even conceptualize anymore. The chambers aren't a warning for 2026 or any specific year. They're a reminder that our ancestors understood something we've forgotten. Stability is temporary. Cycles are eternal. And knowledge must be preserved in forms that outlast civilizations. In an age where most human knowledge exists on servers with 10-year lifespans, the idea of carving information into bedrock, designed to last 12,000 years and counting, feels almost alien. But it's not alien. It's human. It's just a version of humanity that remembered how fragile everything is. The chambers beneath the pillars do not shout. They endure. And in doing so, they remind us that the earliest humans were not naive observers of the sky. They were archivists of deep time.